We live in interesting times for the headlines. Nuclear-armed North Korea successfully tests super-large multiple rocket launchers. But leader Kim Jong-un is not described as commanding the drill, as analysts say Pyongyang seeks to normalize its launches.
The modeling estimates.
And President Trump extended the U.S. social distancing guidelines to April 30.
I'll say it again. The peak, the highest.
And the coronavirus still impacting different countries and communities around the world. We're live in London, Japan, the United Kingdom, and South Korea. Welcome to our viewers in the Philippines and around the world. I'm Alma Angeles, live in Manila. Eagle News International starts now. First, nuclear-armed North Korea successfully tested super-large multiple rocket launchers, according to state media on Monday. But leader Kim Jong-un was not described as commanding the drill. And analysts are saying Pyongyang is seeking to normalize its launches. With the world focused on the coronavirus pandemic and North Korea insisting it has not had a single COVID-19 case, the isolated state has carried out 4 such firings this month. South Korea had said 2 projectiles, presumed to be ballistic missiles, were fired on Sunday from the North Korean port city of Wonsan into the Sea of Japan, also known as the East Sea. The day after another firing earlier this month, North Korean state media said Kim had received a letter from U.S. President Donald Trump detailing a plan to develop ties, a move later confirmed by a White House official. The report cited Kim's powerful sister Kim Yo-jong, who warned that the apparently good personal relationship between the 2 leaders would not be enough to foster broader relations. President Trump also expressed his intent to render cooperation in the anti-epidemic work, she said in a statement published by KCNA. Meanwhile, analysts said the North has been continuing to refine its weapons capabilities more than a year after a summit between Kim and President Trump broke down in Hanoi. Unusually, the official Korean Central News Agency, KCNA, did not say in its report that Kim had directed Sunday's test. The leader is almost always shown overseeing the North's launches, but on this occasion, KCNA said it was led by ruling party Vice Chairman Ri Pyong-chol and conducted by the Academy of National Defense Science. North Korea has closed its borders to try to protect itself from the novel coronavirus and is one of the few remaining countries yet to report a case of the disease that has killed almost 34,000 people worldwide. But the virus is likely to have reached the secretive nation. It is widely believed, with health experts warning it could devastate the country given its weak medical infrastructure and widespread malnutrition. In other news, the Civil Aviation Authorities of the Philippines, or CAAP, grounded the entire fleet of Lyon Air, Inc., the operator of the medical evacuation or medevac plane that burst into flames during takeoff at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport on Sunday night. The plane, bound for Japan, exploded at the end of NAIA Runway 24 at around 8 p.m. All 8 on board, 6 Filipino crew, 2 foreign national passengers, did not survive the accident.
That we confirmed that there was an accident that happened tonight at around 7:57 as per the information of their takeoff. And unfortunately, all the passengers, there were no survivors on the flight.
Meron pong dalawa, foreign national, isang Canadian, isang American citizen.
Investigation on the medevac plane with registry number RPC 5880 is still ongoing, and investigators have already retrieved the cockpit voice recorder. Authorities will investigate if there are aviation safety procedures violated by the operator and/or the crew. CAAP Deputy Director General Don Mendoza earlier said those from the Manila Tower noticed the medevac plane was having difficulty, saying that based on the size of the aircraft, it took some time for it to take off. Meanwhile, due to the incident or the accident, the airport runway has temporarily closed until almost 5 a.m. on Monday. Now, this has affected 3 flights, 1 Korean Air flight that was diverted to Clark on Sunday night, and 2 Hong Kong Airlines flights that were rescheduled to arrive and depart Monday afternoon. The head of the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, said it's clear that the global economy has now entered a recession that could be as bad or worse than the 2009 downturn. As if the U.S. was now in recession, she noted that Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell had already said that America may well be in a recession. Take a look.
The human costs of the coronavirus pandemic are already immeasurable, and all countries need to work together to protect people and limit the economic damage. This is a moment for solidarity, which was a major theme of the meeting today of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors. There I emphasized 3 points. First, the outlook for global growth. For 2020, it is negative, a recession at least as bad as during the global financial crisis or worse. But we expect recovery in 2021. To get to it, it is paramount to prioritize containment and strengthen health systems everywhere. The economic impact is and will be severe, but the faster the virus stops, the quicker and stronger the recovery will be. We strongly support the extraordinary fiscal actions many countries have already taken to boost health systems and protect affected workers and firms. And we welcome the moves of major central banks to ease monetary policy. These are both efforts. They are not only in the interest of each country, but of the global economy as a whole. And even more will be needed, especially on the fiscal front. My second point is that advanced economies are generally in a better position to respond to the crisis, but many emerging markets and low-income countries face significant challenges. They are badly affected by outward capital flows, and domestic activity will be severely impacted as countries respond to the epidemic. Investors have already pulled $83 billion from emerging markets since the beginning of the crisis, the largest capital outflow ever recorded. And we are particularly concerned about low-income countries in that distress, an issue on which we are working closely with the World Bank. Third, what can we, the IMF, do to support our members? We are concentrating bilateral and multilateral surveillance on this crisis and policy actions to temper its impact. We will massively step up emergency finance. Nearly 80 countries are requesting our help, and we are working closely with the other international financial institutions to provide a strong, coordinated response for largest possible impact. We are replenishing the Catastrophe Containment and Relief Trust to help the poorest countries. We welcome those who have already made pledges and call on others to join. And we stand ready to deploy all our $1 trillion lending capacity. But we are not stopping there. We are looking at other available options. Several low and middle income countries have asked the IMF to make a SDR allocation, as we did during the global financial crisis, and we are exploring this option with our membership. Major central banks have initiated bilateral swap lines with emerging market countries. As the global liquidity crunch takes hold, we need members to provide additional swap lines. And again, we will be exploring with our executive board and membership a possible proposal that would help facilitate a broader network of swap lines, including through an IMF swap facility.
To the U.S. now, President Donald Trump has extended emergency coronavirus restrictions for the United States. President Trump warned that the U.S. crisis, which has seen a doubling of infections in only 2 days, would continue to get worse. Let's listen in.
The modeling estimates that the peak in death rate is likely to hit in 2 weeks. So, I'll say it again, the peak, the highest point of death rates, remember this, is likely to hit in 2 weeks. Nothing would be worse than declaring victory before the victory is won. That would be the greatest loss of all. Therefore, the next 2 weeks and during this period, it's very important that everyone strongly follow the guidelines, have to follow the guidelines that our great Vice President holds up a lot. He's holding that up a lot. He believes in it so strongly. The better you do, the faster this whole nightmare will end. We can expect that by June 1st, we will be well on our way to recovery. We think by June 1st, a lot of great things will be happening. On Easter, we probably, but that could be a peak. That could be a peak period. That could be the peak, sadly to say, that could be the peak number of deaths before it starts coming down.
Now, the revised guidelines came after top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci issued a dire projection, a warning that the novel coronavirus could kill up to 200,000 Americans if sufficient measures to mitigate the crisis are not taken. Let's listen in.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, the number I gave out is, based on modeling, and I think it's entirely conceivable that if we do not mitigate to the extent that we're trying to do, that you could reach that number. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, you could make a big soundbite about it, but the fact is it's possible. What we're trying to do is not let that happen. So instead of concentrating on the upper and the lower, we're saying that we're trying to push it all the way down. But the second part of your question was, yes, we feel that the mitigation that we're doing right now is having an effect. It's very difficult to quantitate it because you have two dynamic things going on at the same time. You have the virus going up and you have the mitigation trying to push it down. But the decision to not prolong, but to extend this mitigation process until the end of April, I think was a wise and prudent decision. Dr. Birx and I spent a considerable amount of time going over all the data, why we felt this was a best choice of us, and the President accepted it. So, in direct answer to your question, the idea that we may have these many cases played a role in our decision in trying to make sure that we don't do something prematurely and pull back when we should be pushing.
Meanwhile, in New York State, the epicenter of the outbreak, the death toll surged to 1,000. In an effort to help alleviate overburdened hospitals, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Javits employees had set up a 1,000-bed facility at the Jacob Javits Convention Center in Lower Manhattan. Now, according to a tally by Johns Hopkins University, there are nearly 140,000 confirmed virus cases in the U.S., and more than 2,400 people have already died. In recent days, local officials in New York and elsewhere have locked horns with the Trump administration over the federal response to the crisis. Shortages in national stockpiles of emergency medical equipment have led to unequal distribution between states, with some suggesting the allocation of resources is based not on need, but on political affiliations of local officials. Meanwhile, medical staff in America's coronavirus hotbed, New York, are struggling with long hours and a dire need for protective equipment. And as infections surge, they increasingly fear for their own safety. Doctors and nurses are working around the clock caring for patients hit by the fast-spreading infection, risking their lives on the front lines of the global crisis. Let's listen to this.
Exposure is constant and it's so much that it's just a matter of time before we all have it and we all get it. It's just, there's no way to avoid it because it's constant. The exposure is constant. And like I said, even if we're not being exposed through the patient so much, we are being exposed through each other. And it's a huge loss, and we're all devastated. We're pretty sad because we feel like the federal government, the CDC, the hospital administration, everybody failed us to the point where we've all got exposed and risked our own lives, not knowing if, going to work is going to kill us now because, like I said, the exposure is constant. The anxiety and the fear was palpable. I mean, you could go around and see everybody was so scared, and we still are, and so anxious about where would these people go, what nurse is going to be the lucky one that's going to get this assignment, is there any way I can get out of it if I have a pre-existing condition? We are all getting infected, so clearly something is missing. We have failed to protect ourselves and protect each other. We have floors that are missing most of their staff already because they're sick enough to have to stay home. If we had been protected and we had the proper equipment, we wouldn't be getting sick and exposing each other and being symptomatic enough to be able to stay home. This is out of control. We've lost control completely. We can't contain it anymore because we can't even raise a flag and a concern to stop it, to take care of it. It's all over the place. I isolated myself, so I'm staying in my attic. I'm lucky enough to have an attic that's I can sleep in. My mother-in-law is isolated on the second floor, and she only has contact with my husband, and he wears a mask and gloves. And then my husband and my kids are on the first floor.
Meanwhile, Manhattan residents are clapping and cheering from their windows in gratitude for the medical workers battling the coronavirus pandemic. New York State has become the epicenter of the pandemic in the U.S. Take a look. Meanwhile, rioting that swept through a crowded prison overnight in the Colombian capital, Bogota, left 23 inmates dead. This is amid rising tensions over the spread of the coronavirus in the penitentiary system. Justice Minister Margarita Cabello said it was a sad and painful day as she confirmed the death toll at the capital's La Modelo prison. Take a look.
Yo como mamá hablo, por favor, ayúdenme para mi hijo. Quiero saber de mi hijo. Quiero saber de mi hijo. Yo en este momento me siento con miedo, angustia, como todos acá, porque todos no sabemos qué pasa con nuestros familiares. Esta mañana estoy no me animo.
Overseas Filipino workers in China are coronavirus-free but experiencing economic difficulties. This is according to the Philippine ambassador to China, Jose Santiago Chito Santa Romana. Now, in a quote, in a Laging Handa public briefing, Ambassador Santa Ana, bared that Filipino workers, especially those under no work, no pay scheme, are reaching out to the Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, for financial assistance. He explained that Filipino teachers were only paid with living allowance and not their salaries because classes have been suspended. Undocumented Filipino household workers who wanted to return home are also having trouble processing their exit visas. The DOLE earlier assured that all Filipino expatriates from countries with confirmed coronavirus disease cases will be given financial livelihood and employment assistance. Meanwhile, he also bared that Chinese doctors have been tapped by the Department of Health to assist Filipino doctors. Let's listen in.
nabanggit na rin to ni Secretary Locsin, no? Na mayroong medical team na hinahanda na pupunta dyan para tumulong sa atin. Bukod dito, I think that will be done soon.
Meanwhile, President Trump said that the United States would not pay security costs for Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, appearing to confirm that the royal couple have moved to live in California. They reportedly flew by private jet from Canada to Los Angeles before the border between the two countries closed because of the deadly coronavirus outbreak. The couple, who had been living in Canada for several months, rocked the royal family earlier this year with their decision to no longer represent the British monarchy and to pursue a new independent life. But a spokeswoman for the pair later released a statement saying they had no intention of soliciting help from Washington. Now, privately funded security arrangements have been made, the statement said, according to the Washington Post. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng coronavirus disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings,
filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
All right, we are joined live by Aimiko Miwa from the Hamamatsu city in Japan. And she reports that a man there has been infected with the COVID-19. Hello, Aimiko, how are you?
Good evening, Alma. I'm fine here.
Yes, what is your update for us, Aimiko?
So, Hamamatsu City, Shizuoka Prefecture announced on March 28, Saturday, that a self-employed man living in the city was infected with the new coronavirus. This is the first case infection confirmation in the city and the fourth case confirmed in the cities of Shizuoka Prefecture. According to the city, the man had a sore throat on the 25th and a fever the next day. He was hospitalized at a designated infection disease medical facility in the city. He says he works from home and no one has ever contacted him after the fever. Some people in the city who are worried about the symptoms should consult the Hamamatsu City Returnee and Contact Center. Contact information was made available as well.
Aimiko, over there in Japan, the Japanese Prime Minister has just pledged a huge stimulus package for the coronavirus outbreak. Can you tell us about that, Aimiko?
Yes, Alma. Prime Minister Abe has pledged to deploy a huge stimulus package with a size exceeding one compiled during the global financial crisis to combat the outbreak. The size of the stimulus will be larger than 56.8 trillion yen, which is $526 billion emergency package put together in the global financial crisis following the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008. Abe indicated the government will limit the scope of eligibility for cash handouts. He also struck a negative tone about lowering the tax rate, saying he will favor steps that could cause an economic boost rapidly. And the package will also prioritize extending support to small and mid-sized companies hit hard by the coronavirus outbreaks that has led to travel curbs and disruptions in the economic activity. The government will enable banks to extend loans with no interest or collateral. Japan has already drawn upon two emergency packages in response to the outbreak, the first totaling 15.3 billion yen and another with 430 billion yen in actual spending.
All right. Thank you very much, Aimiko, and stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Staying in Japan, a veteran slapstick comedian and a one-time member of the rockabilly band and comedy group The Drifters, Ken Shimura, died of pneumonia caused by the novel coronavirus, and also a surge of coronavirus cases in Japan amid fears that a lack of testing has caused this surge. We have that update from our EBC correspondent, Dennis Lu. Dennis?
Hi, Alma. Good
Hi.
evening. Yeah, a talented Japanese artist performer, Shimura Ken, died on Sunday, March 29th at 11:10 p.m. in a hospital in Tokyo due to pneumonia caused by the new coronavirus. Shimura Yasunori, in real life popularly known as Shimura Ken, is supposed to run in the Olympic torch relay to represent Higashimurayama, a town in Tokyo's suburbs, his agency said. Ken Shimura, who has been active in the popular comedy group The Drifters and has appeared on many television variety shows, was diagnosed with pneumonia on March 20th and was admitted at the hospital in Tokyo, where he was found positive for the novel coronavirus March 23rd. He gained fame while starring in the group's primetime comedy show, It's 8 O'Clock, Gather Everyone. He was known for his popular character in Baka Tanosama, stupid warlord on TV comedy shows. He also led his comedy theater Shimura Kono, meaning Shimura Spirit, since 2006. He wrote many of his own programs, such as Ken Shimura's Daijobuda. He was also regularly seen on Nippon's television variety program Tensai Shimura Dobutsu Koen, meaning Genius Shimura Zoo. This is the first time that a famous celebrity in the country was announced having infected by the coronavirus and died. He was 70 years old, Alma.
All right, so Dennis, Japan has also reported a surge in coronavirus cases. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, Alma. The country has seen surge of untraceable infections in recent days, an early indication that the virus is past the point of controlling without extreme measures. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has yet to declare a state of emergency, but acknowledged Friday that once the infection rate reaches a certain point, our strategy of slowing down the peak of the infections will instantly fall apart. So Japan will step up its efforts to stop the spread of coronavirus by banning the entry of foreign citizens traveling from the United States, China, South Korea, and most of Europe. Non-Japanese citizens who have been in any of these areas in the past 2 weeks will be barred. Tokyo may also ban travel to and from some countries in Southeast Asia and Africa. While Japanese nationals would not be affected, the travel ban would come as a surge in the number of infections in Japan stokes fears that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe may shift from considering to declaring a national state of emergency, a step that could pave the way for a lockdown on its capital, Tokyo. So, Alma, we may be in for a lockdown. So analysts here said such a move would inflict huge damage to an economy already on the verge of recession.
All right. Thank you very much. I hope it doesn't come to that, but keep safe, Dennis, and keep the updates coming. Thank you for your time.
You too, Alma. Reporting live from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Lu for Eagle News International. We live in interesting times.
Our EBC correspondent in South Korea, Kristen Jewel Uy, joins us live. South Korea saw a slight decline in new coronavirus cases, but cluster infections in Seoul and other regions continued to emerge, coupled with a rise in cases involving arrival from overseas. Christine Jewel Uy joins us live. Christine, hello.
Hello, good evening to everyone. Yes, Alma, so that is true. So as of today, March 30, 2020, a total of 9,661 confirmed cases of coronavirus are recorded in South Korea, with 158 deaths and 5,228 recovered patients. There was a slight decline of new coronavirus cases today, but there is a cluster infection in Seoul and other regions continue to emerge with an increased cases from arrivals in South Korea. According to the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or KCDC, today is the 18th consecutive day that new cases only reach about 100 or lesser. Because of the new cases contributed by arrivals in Korea, starting this Wednesday, the country will enforce a 2-week mandatory quarantine on all entries from overseas. All arrivals to the country, regardless of nationality, are required to stay in isolation for 14 days. Visitors without local addresses are to stay in government-designated facilities at their own expense. South Korea has been already enforcing both a 2-week quarantine period and virus tests for all long-term arrivals from Europe, regardless of symptoms, and those coming from the United States have also been required to self-isolate at home for 2 weeks. Foreigners who do not follow the self-quarantine rules without a valid reason will be immediately deported, and this is according to the health authorities. According to the Vice Health Minister, Kim Dang-lip, foreigners who leave their homes without notification will immediately be deported. The KCDC also said that fewer than 100 foreigners entering the country for short-term visits are expected to be quarantined at the facilities each day.
Okay, so Christina, you're still there?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So President Moon Jae-in just said that South Korea will make an emergency cash payment to most families and draw up a second supplementary budget next month to ease the drawn-out economic impact of this outbreak. What can you say about this? Is this true, Christine?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, Ama. President Moon, after an emergency meeting with economic policymakers, said an emergency disaster relief payment, which is up to 1 million won or around $816 would be made to all households except the top 30% by income. He also said that he would prepare another extra budget for parliamentary approval in April, and some small and medium-sized companies would be exempt from paying partial insurance and utility bills starting this month. The new package is the latest in a recent series of steps the government has taken to ease the pressure on our country. And also previous measures have included an interest rate cut, a 11.7 trillion won, which is around $9.54 billion supplementary budget, raising a cap on currency forward positions for banks and a rescue package for companies totaling around 100 trillion won, which is around $81.6 billion. South Korea has largely managed to get an explosive coronavirus epidemic under control.
Yes, that's true. Christine, you have actually managed to get the coronavirus under control. No, it was just reported that the recovery rate this weekend topped 50%. That's fantastic. Now, health experts are noting that recently the nation has managed to significantly slow the number of new cases, and the country has appears to have reined in the outbreak without some of the strict lockdown measures deployed around the world. Well, why is this? What did South Korea do?
Yes, Ama. South Korea developed testing for the virus even before it had a significant number of cases. That is why, if you remember, when members of a religious sect in Daegu started getting sick in February, South Korea was able to rapidly confirm that it was already COVID-19. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa said that testing is central to the outbreak response because that leads to early detection. It minimizes further spread and it allows health authorities to quickly isolate and treat those found with the virus.
Okay, so also, is it true that another religious sect is under scrutiny for holding services for 200 church goers, and then 22 people were linked to this church? 22 people linked to the church have tested positive now.
Yes, that's true. So there's this another controversial religious sect in South Korea just has come under public scrutiny with a cluster of at least 22 coronavirus cases as some Protestant churches went ahead with worship services on Sunday despite a government order for social distancing. Health authorities have been tracing close contacts up to now of at least 200 churchgoers after a member of the Manmin Central Church in Seoul's western district of Guro tested positive for COVID-19 on Wednesday. As of Sunday afternoon, 22 people linked to the church, including a female pastor, had tested positive. Infections occurred when about 200 members of this church gathered in early March to prepare video footage to use in online worship service in response to government guidelines for social distancing, according to the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
All right, thank you very much for your time, Christine. It's good to hear from you. Keep the updates coming.
Yes, this is Christine Jewel Uy from South Korea. We lived an interesting time.
Okay, medical researchers and engineers have teamed up with Formula One outfit Mercedes to adapt a breathing aid for mass production that could keep coronavirus patients off much-needed ventilators. And that and more updates. Joining us live from the United Kingdom is Jennifer Ringwood. Jennifer.
Hello, Alma.
Hello, Jennifer.
Good to see you. What you mentioned there, the Formula One team are working with medical researchers and engineers. Incidentally, this type of medical equipment would normally take years, and it's been something that they've been able to develop in a matter of days. They believe that this equipment, it's what we would be using for sleep apnea. It's called a CPAP. And that is a positive airway pressure device which keeps the airways open. So for those who are in less of a critical situation, they hope that this device would actually help keep the ventilators there for the more critical people. Now what Mercedes and the engineers have done is they've created a process, it's a modified CPAP that works with a little higher pressure, I think, is what they've said here. It increases the oxygen and airflow into the lungs and has already been used in places like Italy and China, so that those with more serious lung infections can use the ventilators and those with less serious lung infections can hopefully recover from the virus using this instead. Now, they expect to be able to produce up to 1,000 a day, which would really help with the ventilator shortage that we have. Although these aren't the same as ventilators, they would very, very much help free up the ventilators that are required for the more serious patients. I have a lot to go through with you here. So
go ahead.
Oh, every day it's changing and minute by minute. So I might give you numbers right now, and then in an hour, because of the way that the hospitals are reporting deaths and positive tests, that could be out of date in 20, 30, 40 minutes. So it's quite difficult to keep on top of it all. We've got a lot of things. So they're expecting that we're going to need, on average, about 30,000 ventilators at the peak of our infections. And right now, we're still short. In the country at the moment, and again, this may have changed in the past 40 minutes or so, we believe we have over 8,000, possibly near to 9,000 already in the country, in the NHS, of the ventilators that are needed. But if you look at that in relation to we need 30,000, and we have around 8,000 or 9,000 currently, production is really, they're trying to step it up. We have 5,000 on order with a company based in Luton. This is a medical equipment company. They now want to double and ramp up their production and try to give us 10,000, and that's the Parapack ventilators. So these are a more portable version of the device, but they are proper ventilators. It's just amazing how industry are trying their best to meet the need for what is potentially going to be needed right now. Dyson, as we know, they think that they can produce 10,000 with their prototype. G-Tech, another British company, they're developing a prototype that would run entirely off an oxygen supply from a hospital. So it's quite incredible how they are working so hard to try and meet the need here. And I believe this is a collaborative effort with specialists, scientists and engineers, not just in this country, but they're also taking advice from countries who are going through the process currently. We have, oh gosh, there is a lot here, sister Alma. So that's Mercedes-Benz. The shortage in testing, shall I go through that, Alma?
Please do.
Yes, right. So the shortage in testing, although that they have made this antigen test available to NHS workers, they simply still haven't been able to release enough. So that is still causing a problem for our NHS workers. So there are, again, people who are having to self-isolate because they do not know if they have the virus, if they have had the virus, or so they're having to stay home when they could possibly be going back to work. The equipment, again, that's being released more, and more hospitals are saying that they are receiving it, but again, there is still a little amount of anxiety, although hospitals, for the majority, they don't seem to be at full capacity yet, so we're nowhere near reaching our peak. It does look like we will eventually meet the need, and if everybody can follow the advice and stay indoors and try to reduce the pressure on the NHS, it does look like we will succeed. So going back to the Mercedes one, I forgot to mention this. University College Hospital, they're already running the clinical trials on these already. It's been a matter of days. We heard yesterday that they had already received 40 of these CPAP machines, and they're aiming to provide 100 among 3 other hospitals as well. I think there is just so much to tell you right now, Alma.
Yeah. Well, I just read this one now. According to a Birmingham MP, older Muslim and Sikh people are struggling to adhere to quarantine guidelines such as physical distancing because of religious beliefs. If you can come up with that, I don't know if you have anything on that now. If the government and police taken a more hands-on approach by imposing fines or arrests on this, you can get back with me on this, but if you have anything right now, yeah.
I know about the fines. That's already we've been warned over the weekend that anybody going out without a good reason, they can face a fine from the police, strong warnings and things like that. In terms of specific religious groups having an issue, I haven't heard that as yet. I know Muslim neighbours, they seem to be doing okay at the moment, although yes, they are having to isolate within the home.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard that somebody was arrested for coughing on a police officer who was COVID positive.
Oh.
And he is actually going to be given a prison sentence. You did catch me off guard, so I don't have the absolute details of that, but it has been a fact that somebody that was being questioned by the police decided he was going to cough on the police officer, and he was charged.
Oh.
I believe he will have to do some time, whether it's weeks or months, I really couldn't tell you. But yes, definitely, it is ramping up here. We don't quite have the same state as Italy, but for the most part, it does seem that everybody is understanding the message and cooperating. There are a number of elderly who are still having difficulty just getting the basic things like groceries and that sort of thing. But the nice thing about it is neighbourhoods are collaborating, working together and trying to help each other. It's I can say from my experience here, we are a very diverse road. We've got people from every nationality on this street, and it's lovely that they are being very caring. Doesn't matter where you're from originally. As a human race on this road, I would say that that good spirit and looking after each other it's a stronger spirit than anything negative that I would say here. I can give you an update on numbers, but again, that may have changed. So since the testing has been ramped up, we've got 19,522. That was correct just over an hour ago. And the cases of deaths, that has been a frightening number, actually. It's 1,228. But we are receiving updates quite quickly on those because the hospitals are... there's a glitch in how they're reporting this information. So there's a certain disparity at the moment. We can't really be accurate. And there are claims that, speculation that these figures of deaths could possibly be 3 times because we're not taking into account other areas. So we don't fully know how many of these are from old people's homes or if they are being reported in the same way as through the NHS. So a little bit of confusion there, and I can't at the moment get accurate figures for you.
Yeah, Jennifer, can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so what would you say has been the impact on the local economy with the significant reduction of tourists now?
At the moment, with the help that is coming through, that is being minimised. The 0 hours contracts or people that are self-employed, this is a grey area. So some are able to access help, some are still waiting to see if there will be a government bailout. It looks like for some of them they'll be waiting 3 months before they can actually access anything. So the ready cash right now, that's the thing that a lot of people are asking. How do we, say for example, somebody who's a self-employed actor, they may only have savings for a month. If they have to wait 3 months to access anything, how will they survive in the meantime? But it does look like the government is very seriously trying to take hold of this and try to alleviate the panic that is occurring for that particular group of people that find themselves without a financial income. I'm sorry, did I miss something from your question?
No, actually, that's good. Thank you for the updates, and thank you for your time. I know you're busy, but thank you so much, Jennifer, for all that updates. Keep safe. Keep healthy.
Problem. No problem. Thank you, Alma. I'm Jennifer Ringwood. We live in interesting times.
Now, with India locked down over the coronavirus and no way to earn money, Dilip G. Thakur faces a grim choice: either walk home or die hungry. Take a look.
काम करने के लिए आते काम बंद हो गया क्या खाएंगे किसी आगे ही मेरे पास
So thousands are now walking long distances back to their home villages after all transport was stopped except for essential services as authorities struggle to contain the outbreak, which has infected more than 700 people in India. Huge numbers had crammed onto trains and buses before the country of 1.3 billion people ground to a halt for 3 weeks, but many others were left stranded. Now they are trying to get home any way they can, often on foot, with little money or food, and eateries and guest houses closed along the way. There are usually around 100 million unskilled or semi-skilled migrant workers in India, according to a government survey. For 2016 to 2017, around a fifth of the country's workforce. A lack of jobs, particularly in poor states such as Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, forces them to head to major cities and wealthier southern states. Meanwhile, all sectors of the Canadian society are trying to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. As Eagle News correspondent Thomas I. Likeness tells us, people from all walks of life are beginning to adjust to the new realities. Thomas?
The parking lot outside this restaurant would normally be full this time of day, but with social distancing, more people are choosing to eat at home. The restaurant and food sector aren't the only ones feeling the economic pinch of the pandemic. I took a look at some other sectors of Canadian society to see how they are faring. Parth Shukla manages an IHOP in Edmonton. He says his business has dropped right off.
We have had 90% reduction in the business that we had.
Shukla says there's been an increase in takeout orders, but not enough to keep everyone busy.
Before all this began, we used to have about 40 employees, and right now we are down to 7. So we have had to lay off about 33 employees.
Commission salespeople like car dealers are the hardest hit. Floor traffic is almost non-existent, and sales are rare. In the real estate industry, agents not only have a slowdown to contend with, they've also lost a valuable sales tool, open houses. Sellers are reluctant to have people touring their homes, and social distancing is also a problem when several prospective buyers arrive at the same address. The Real Estate Council of Alberta advises agents to assess their own risk when dealing with clients, and many are working remotely, not even coming into the office. You'd think people working in the healthcare center would be immune to the economic effects of the pandemic. But doctors in Edmonton say telemedicine could put them out of business. Telehealth has become commonplace as in-person visits to clinics are being discouraged to maintain social distancing. Doctors in Edmonton say they may face bankruptcy, claiming the provincial government just doesn't pay them enough for those virtual visits. In a news release, the Edmonton Zone Medical Staff Association says the government is paying physicians less than half of what they would get for an office visit. The fee for a virtual visit is $20, the lowest in Canada, according to an association survey. The association says this is a time to focus on providing patients with virtual care, not a time to add to the stress of a pandemic by forcing practices to close. Funeral directors fear their workers may be at risk because of a lack of safety equipment. The Alberta Funeral Service Association says it's struggling to get items such as masks and gloves. It also wants the government to recognize funeral service providers as frontline workers in the fight against COVID-19. At least one large supermarket chain in Canada is adding protective measures for its employees and customers. Galen Weston is the chairman of Loblaw Companies. He says his stores are putting in protective plexiglass shields at the checkout counter. Through all of this, people are being encouraged to maintain their hope. Alberta's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, offers these encouraging words.
We will get through this, but to do that, we need everyone's help. Take this seriously. Stay home unless it is essential for you to go out. If you are struggling with today's news, reach out to friends and loved ones and talk. Tell them how you're feeling.
In the end, people will probably emerge stronger. And because they've had to set aside for a while what on a world scale is a prosperous lifestyle here in Canada, maybe they will have a better understanding of what their life is all about. In Edmonton, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Now, here's something to look forward to. Our own Hawaii Bureau put together this lighthearted feature for anyone aspiring to visit this part of the world, especially as soon as travel restrictions are lifted and we're all clear of the pandemic. Let's take a look.
At the iconic Lyon Canal in anticipation of the approach of Hurricane Lane to the Hawaiian Islands. Our concern tonight being the Lyon Canal may overflow due to the heavy rains being brought by the hurricane.
Every morning, Mexican fitness coach Pato Cervantes offers a free workout session for a neighborhood in Hamburg in northern Germany. He gets people to exercise who are confined to their houses because of the novel coronavirus. Take a look.
3, 2, 1, keep it there. Ich bin Pato, ich bin 19 Jahre alt. Ich komme aus Mexiko und ich bin Fitnesstrainer hier in Hamburg bei High Cycle. Letzte 3, 2. Deswegen freut mich einfach sehr, dass alle meine Nachbarn nach draußen kommen und dass alle machen mit und es ist einfach super, super cool. Also eigentlich, ich habe einen Weinparty-Balkon gesehen und ich dachte, ja, man trifft im Balkon, um ein Wein zu trinken, wir können auch Sport machen. Ein letztes Mal, perfekt. Ready, ready. Du fängst den Tag mit Sport und mit Musik und guter Laune und die ganze Atmosphäre von der Straße, es ist ganz anderes.
All right, very uplifting. And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, thank you and we'll see you soon. I'm Alma Angeles and we live in interesting times.